Hello, everybody. This is Larry Sloan from AIHA, and we're going to walk through the new AIHA Heat Stress app. So first things first, after you download the app from your app store, you will see a welcome screen that looks like this. And you're going to click the next button, and then again, and then again, and then finish. You will be asked to select your language. We'll choose English for purposes of this demonstration. Your units of measure for temperature, we'll choose Fahrenheit. And then it will ask you to select your workload. And you'll see for each level, there is a description of what it means to work very heavy, heavy, moderate, and light. So for purposes of this demonstration, let's select heavy, click continue. The next screen is optional, where you can indicate your work schedule. So for purposes of this demonstration, let's go ahead and select Monday through Friday. And we're going to select from, let's say, 6 a.m. to 4 p.m., 1600 hours. And we'll skip the meal time. Now, the reason why you might want to enter a work schedule is if you would like to be alerted while you are at work when your heat stress is at a certain level or above, it will alert you every hour on the hour during your prescribed work hours. If you don't want to be alerted, then you can skip this step. And then finally, the app will ask whether or not it would like to send you notifications. And that's where you get to the locations screen. So for now, we're going ahead and we're going to add the current location. And we will allow the app to use our location. Okay, now we are at our location screen, and you can see we've indicated Falls Church, Virginia, which is where AIHA headquarters is. Right now, the heat stress is considered minimal. You will notice on the screen the WBGT, the wet bulb globe temperature, is listed as 70 degrees Fahrenheit, and you'll see a series of gray boxes below. The boxes indicate whether this is an outdoor versus an indoor location, and so you can see here's the configuration for outdoor versus indoor. You can pivot back and forth between the two, and for now, let's talk about an outdoor simulation. You can then indicate on this screen revisiting your workload. Remember, we indicated it was heavy when we set up the app. We're going to leave it at heavy. This is where you reconfirm the type of clothing that you're wearing. You can see there's a description under each of the options. This is where we indicate the degree of cloud cover. And let's assume that we're going to remain as a sunny, clear sky. And then finally, there's something called non-solar heat irradiance. That means, let's say you're working next to a boiler. And if you're working next to a boiler, you would have the opportunity to select low, moderate, or high. And there are descriptions as to what each of these indications mean. So for example, low non-solar heat radiance means that you're standing several feet from, say, a furnace or a small oven. Moderate means it's the warmth you feel when you're very close to, say, a heat lamp or standing under the sun outdoors. And then high would be when you're working very close to an oven or a blast furnace, for example, in an industrial setting. We would have a lot of high non-solar heat irradiance. So for purposes of this demonstration, let's say that we are in a low environment, and then we're going to click Save. So on this screen for Falls Church, right now the heat stress is minimal. It's not too hot outside. And you can see a recap of the ambient air temperature, 73 degrees. The heat index, which is the combination of the ambient air temperature and the humidity, is also 71 degrees. The relative humidity is quite low. The air quality is moderate. This is data that comes from the National Weather Service. And then these are the configurations down below that are inputted by you, the user. And then finally, towards the bottom of the screen, you'll see a forecast for the rest of today, as well as a 5-day forecast. So I'll pivot between today and 5-day. And you can see that the anticipated heat stress is relatively low, but then it gets higher Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, because the anticipated ambient air temperature and humidity is going to increase the remainder of the week. And then at the bottom of the presentation here are the current health recommendations. So because we're in a low heat stress environment today, Monday, you can see that there really are no health recommendations. So now let's go ahead and add a second location. So we're going to add Miami, Florida, which typically is going to be warmer. And now you're in a moderate setting. So let's say, again, you can see the settings here: outdoor, heavy, work clothes, sunny, clear sky, and no irradiating heat. Let's say we change our work clothes, and let's say we're wearing heavy coveralls. Now you can see that the heat stress has jumped up to high with a WBGT of 81 degrees Fahrenheit. As you scroll down, you will see the forecast for the rest of the day is showing elevated heat stress, and the 5-day forecast is also showing elevated heat stress today through the end of the week. Because your heat stress is in an elevated status, you can see that there are additional health recommendations as you scroll down through the screen. And these are common sense strategies that both you as an employee and as an employer would want to consider to help keep your workers cool in the outdoor environment. And of course, you can add additional locations if you wish. You can customize the configuration so that for each location, you can have a different set of criteria. So you might be working extra hard in one location, lighter in another. You might have full sun in one location, partially cloudy in another, etc. Now we're going to select Miami, Florida, and we're going to look at an indoor workplace configuration. Version 2 of the Heat Stress app allows the app to be used for all kinds of workers. So on this screen, this is currently calculated for an outdoor worker. We're going to select that box that says outdoor, and we're going to pivot over to indoor. There are two different ways to simulate an indoor working environment. You can input the exact temperature and humidity. So let's say you have a thermometer and a humidity monitor indoors. So you could actually input the temperature if you wish and the humidity. So this is showing you the humidity that you could change. So let's say the humidity indoors for some reason is, let's say it's 80%. And let's say that the ambient temperature indoors is 82 degrees. And let's say we are going to continue to work in a heavy mode and that we are wearing heavy coveralls, that there is no solar, non-solar heat irradiance, and there is no indoor wind speed. So we're going to save that. And again, you're showing a high heat stress. So the same recommendations on how to protect yourself is as if you were outdoors under that original scenario. Again, if you change the indoor conditions, it will have an impact potentially on the calculated heat stress. Now, the other way you can adjust the indoor conditions is we can go back to indoor, and instead of inputting the exact indoor temperature and humidity, we can use what's called the temperature differential. So this means that you look at your outdoor weather conditions and you decide on what the differential is between the outdoor weather conditions and your indoor weather conditions. So let's say that based on the outdoor weather conditions, you happen to know that indoors it is 10 degrees warmer than outdoors. And let's say you happen to know that the relative humidity indoors is perhaps, for whatever reason, 86%, whereas the National Weather Service calls the outdoor humidity 84%. So you have that flexibility to adjust your indoor conditions for both temperature and relative humidity. And let's say for some reason you are now working near an oven or a boiler. So now let's say that the non-solar heat irradiance is high. Now you can see that the heat stress has gone to extreme. Because the heat stress is now extreme in this indoor environment, the number and the magnitude of the health recommendations has changed. So as you scroll down through the bottom of the screen, you will see a longer list of strategies on how to cool down workers because you're in an extreme heat stress situation. The last functionality I'd like to cover is the resources section of the app. At the bottom of the screen, you'll see a middle tab that says resources, and you can see there are a variety of reading materials, starting with understanding the concept of wet bulb globe temperature, written in plain English. There's information on what is non-solar heat irradiance. Again, that would be working near a boiler or an oven as an example. Some precautionary measures that one can take before entering a hot workplace. Information on how solar irradiance is calculated into the app in terms of the magnitude of sun, if you will. The concept of acclimatization, which is the adjustment that a body has to a hot working environment. It typically takes up to 5 days for an individual to become acclimatized to a hot working environment. Signs and symptoms of heat illness. A little more information about workload levels. More information about control measures to protect your workplace. Other health issues that impact your ability to withstand heat, things like age, genetics, and health conditions. And then finally, a review of what the clothing adjustment factor means. This is the type of clothing that you're wearing and how it affects your ability to withstand heat. Again, these resources are located on the bottom of the screen, wherever you are in the app.